And let me tell you, this transmission is just so responsive. Like the gear shifts. Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we are going to be going over a 2022 BMW X3, and with all that being said, let's just hop right into the video. So under the hood, we have a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Fuel economy is 21 around town and then 28 on the highway, with power outputs being 248 horsepower and then 258 pound-feet of torque. Now the cool thing is that torque is available at 1450 RPMs. Also, I love the little carbon fiber accents, and then how it says twin power turbo. But yeah, that's under the hood. Now let's go over the front end of the X3. So first off, I love this paint color, and by the way, I did clean the car beforehand, but like literally driving from the car wash to here, it already got dirty again, so it was kind of all for naught. But anyways, you guys can see the blue, and kind of down below, it's just absolutely fantastic. I love how it really shows the body lines here on the car as well. You can see all of those. Now you can see we've got these gigantic LED accent lights that are wrapped around the LED headlights, and they are super bright at night. And then you can see that we've got kind of like the brushed aluminum look here around the whole grille, and notice how it's actually shut. You guys can see that behind. Now the reason that it's like that is when it needs more airflow, right, it can open. But when it doesn't need more airflow, or when it's really cold, for example, it closes it off, so then it keeps the engine warm, which is just really cool. Parking sensors here at the bottom, and then you can see the trim right there kind of matches the grille. But overall, I think it's a good looking car from a front end perspective. Now coming on the side here, we've got two 45mm tires wrapped around 19-inch wheels in the front and over in the rear as well. And then as for the design on the wheels themselves, I think they look really cool. It kind of has this like robust, kind of like muscular look to it. And then you guys can see the wheel well area and a little bit with the suspension on top of that. We've got the plastic molding here for the fender flares, got that little vent there off to the side, and then you can see the trim there. And like I said, I cleaned the car beforehand, but like driving back here got dirty. But anyways, you guys can see here with the mirrors, they are body painted. And then I love the trim here around the windows. I think that looks really sharp. And then here's kind of like your full side profile on the X3. Now here's a key fob for the X3. You can see that there's nothing happening there on the back. And then on the front here, we've got the unlock, the BMW logo for the lock, and then the opening here for the hatch. There is another way to open up the hatch. You guys can see that you can just press that, and that'll pop it right open. And popping here into the hatch area, you guys can see the storage space underneath, and definitely like this, definitely kind of makes it look a little bit more premium, more upscale. We have the cargo cover on top of that, and then there's a little charging port right there. And overall, it's actually very spacious here in the cargo area, so you can fit quite a bit back there. And then when you're done, you can press this to close it, and then there is the lock button on top of that, and bada bing, bada boom. Now let's finish things up here with the rear. First off, I love these new taillights. I think they look really sharp. You can see kind of like the accenting on them. When they're off, they don't necessarily look as cool, but when they're on, these things look crazy. Got the X3 logo and then the xDrive 30i logo right there. And then you guys can see the exhaust tips on either side. And, well, that's all for that. Now popping here to the interior, you can see that we've got this really nice wood trim here, and then you can see the light back here as well, how it's kind of like doing that strobe function. That is pretty cool. And then you guys can see green on the other side. I know I'm doing some crazy stuff here at the interior, but you know what, I thought we'd have fun. Anyways, you guys can see the door handle right there, and then you can see all the trim down below, really nice with the coloration on it. And then here is the seat in the rear. You can see the perforated leather all down the center, looks fantastic. And well, of course, we got a brush off the old man's slippers, and you guys can see legroom back here, and then also headroom as well. Pretty good. We've got some vents back here. We have our own climate zone that we can control as well. We've got some USBs there at the very bottom, and then I don't think I'm going to be able to pull the cup holder thing down because I got gloves on. Let's try. Can you do this with gloves? The answer is no. But anyways, this pulls down to beat armrest and some cup holders. Now here's a door panel at the front. You guys can see again with the wood trim right here, and then down below with all the padding. And then notice how it's doing the blinking just like the trim there in the back. I think that's pretty cool. I think this is just to signify that the door is open. That's my guess, because you can see all the other trim pieces are just solid coloration. So that is actually my guess on that. I thought for some reason I changed the function on it, but I guess that I'm not that cool, and it's just a safety thing, which is cool because I can imagine at night this will be blinking so someone will see that. Anyways, notice we've got the memory seat function right there, the door lock and unlock. The mirrors do have blind spot monitoring. We've got all of our window controls, which are very nice from a material standpoint. And then here are the front seats. You can see with the leather, perfect leather here down the side with the bolstering, and then you can open this portion up so you can have a little bit more bolstering. And then you guys can see the adjustments there on the side of the seat. And then there's the pedals down below. We've got our light controls right here, and there's one more look before we pop in. So here's the steering wheel in the X3. You can see you've got really nice leather all around the steering wheel, and then you can see the darker stitching on the center. Heated steering wheel button right here with the BMW logo there in the center. These are kind of controls for like the phone controls, the radio as well, through the heads-up display actually with some of the controls, which is pretty interesting. And then we have our cruise control over here on the other side. Paddle shifters for the 8-speed automatic, which are very responsive. Windshield wiper stock, turn signal stock, and well, that's all for that. So you guys can see here with the center gauge cluster, it looks really cool with the overall theme of it and everything, and then how you have the little navigation screen there in the center, which is neat. And we have the different drive modes, which will kind of slightly change the gauge cluster. So that's Sport, and then that's into Comfort. And we have our Eco Pro, which I haven't used at all. I probably should, but I'm all about fun driving. But yeah, anyways, that is everything there for the center gauge cluster. So here's the center infotainment system. First off, response time is fantastic. So just going between the different sources, for example, it's really easy to use. And I'm a huge fan of this infotainment system. I had it in my Supra and I think it functions great. It's easy to use overall. And there's analog controls too. So like if you want to use the touchscreen, you can, but if you don't, you can use the analog controls too. And I'll show you guys those in a moment, but yeah, it's pretty cool with all that. And then here's the camera part of it. You've got the backup camera with trajectory lines. Turn with the steering wheel, resolution on it's great. You can customize stuff with the camera right here. I'm glad that they have that right there rather than having to go through a bunch of different menus. But that's all for that. Now down below we've got the hazard light, and then that's for the safety tech to turn it to individual mode or everything on. Individual mode, you can have certain systems turned off, which is great. Dual zone climate controls, we've got heated seats for the front, no ventilated seats. We've got the analog controls here for the radio, and then we have the X3 logo down there. And then we have this cover. I always have it open though because, I don't know, it just doesn't match the rest of the trim pieces here. Kind of looks out of place a little bit, but yeah, tons of storage space here. Little USB. We've got the shifter, which is pretty easy to use. You just have to press this button on the side, pull it down, and then push it up. So like that's reverse, this is drive, that's manual mode. It's really easy to use overall. Got our stability control, parking sensors, auto stop start. We've got the engine stop start. We got our sport mode, comfort, eco pro, and then this is kind of like an off-road type mode. And then we've got our auto hold, parking brake right here, and then these are all the controls for the infotainment system if you want to use analog controls. And we have the center console here, which has another USB inside of it, and then nice padding on top of it. Got the glove box, definitely nice. And then again, you guys can see the ambient lighting is pretty much all over in this car, which is great. Nice wood trim here in this area, which I definitely like. The dash, on the other hand, though, is pretty basic from a material standpoint. You got like some padding on some surfaces, but there's a lot of plastic throughout this car. Now up top here, we do have a full panoramic sunroof, which is definitely nice. The control for it is just right here with this little arrow button. And we have our regular sun visors, all black headliner, and yeah, that's all for the top. So here's our window sticker for the X3. Feel free to read all the options. You guys can see the base price right there, $45,700. And I guess this is called Tanzanite Blue 2 Metallic. All I know is it looks very nice. But this one has the premium package, for example, is one of the options on it. But yeah, like I said, feel free to read all that. Total MSRP, $51,390. And then here's the standard features that come with the car, and then the warranty information, if you want to read through all of that. And then you guys can see the fuel economy, and then also the BMW Ultimate Care that it gives you with the maintenancing, which is definitely nice. But yeah, with all that being said, let's teleport to Provo, actually, and drive it. So let's talk about visibility before we set off. There's your visibility of the hood, and then you guys can see the heads-up display now. Both the mirrors, they do have blind spot. And then throughout the rest of the rear. And well, let's set off. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different compared to what we normally do with these test drives, and that is we were driving down in Provo because I was down here today, and I'm like, you know what? Instead of doing that same canyon road I do with every single vehicle that I get as a loaner, let's just drive somewhere else. So we're going to start in this kind of like high-ish traffic area, and then we'll go onto the highway so you guys will be able to see like a full-blown acceleration and everything. And you know what? It's different. We'll try it out. Anyways, let's talk about the X3. This vehicle has actually impressed me a massive amount, and this has kind of made me become more of a fan of BMW overall. So first off, this car is a really good luxury vehicle from a ride quality standpoint. The suspension is super smooth, super supple, and when you go over bumps, it doesn't upset the chassis, and it doesn't feel bone jarring. I don't know what BMW's done with all of their new platforms, but they've done an amazing job. Like, just with how everything feels from a driving experience perspective, it's amazing. The only thing I will mention about this, and I mentioned this about the 4 Series as well, and also the Supra that I owned, because again, that was built off a BMW platform, is the front ends of all these vehicles feel very light. Like, they kind of have like, they lift up a little bit, which is interesting. I don't know why that's a thing. I don't know if it's because, you know, the front end is so light because there's not a really big heavy engine under the hood, but you definitely do get that feel. But it doesn't annoy me that much at all. Overall, like, again, ride quality is amazing, and this is just a great daily driver vehicle. The seats are super comfortable as well. This vehicle is really easy to just drive. It's like the perfect size where you can kind of, if you want to zip around in traffic a little bit, you know, do BMW stuff, right? Sorry, all jokes aside, you can do that. But also, you can just like sit back and relax, and it's got a really good sound system, so you can just listen to the music, and it's so comfortable. I'm super impressed, and I think this is just kind of the route that BMW is going. They're going away from, like, they still make very sporty, fun cars. Like, this still does have a sporty characteristic to it, and I'll show you guys that in a little bit, but they've kind of pushed more into the luxury side where they're making their cars just super luxurious from a feeling standpoint, and I'm all about it. Always gotta love this Provo traffic. So I'm in the sport mode now and the manual mode, and let me tell you, this transmission is just so responsive. Like, the gear shifts up and down, just instantaneous. It's fantastic. And even though this has a small turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder, because of how responsive the transmission is, it definitely carries the engine, and so it doesn't bother me as much as it normally would to have such a small engine in an SUV like this, right? Especially when it's, you know, from a luxury performance automaker. But yeah, they've nailed it with the tuning on this transmission. It's so sharp, and it's definitely the high point of the X3 from a performance standpoint is the transmission. Now, aside from that, there is quite a bit of turbo lag with this little 2-liter, but once you get into the turbos, it's pretty good. It's got a decent amount of torque, and the X3 is not a super large SUV, and so it actually feels pretty adequate from a power perspective. Like, you guys can see here, like, it's not crazy quick, but it's got enough passing power. It has enough passing power for the highway, and also, you know, with that super smooth, stable platform that they have with their new vehicles, and again, this has it can handle high speeds very well. It's super comfortable from a suspension standpoint, but then it's just feels so stable, and so I think that they've just nailed a really good balance with this, and so yeah, does great on the interstate, super comfortable, and like I said, when you need to pass people, you can pass people. And then the other thing I want to mention with this, which obviously because of the traffic and the roads that we're with today, we aren't really showing this all that much, is the handling of the X3 is really good. It handles more like a car than it does like an SUV. It has that higher seating position than an SUV has, right? It has some ground clearance, but when you take it around corners and everything, it's very stable, and you can take it around corners very quick, and it just lends to a really fun driving experience. And this is one of the few SUVs that I would put as like a commuter SUV to an extent that is also really fun to drive. And again, this is the base model engine. You guys can remember one of my neighbors has the M version of this vehicle, 2021, which has like 500 horsepower, something crazy, and that is such a fun vehicle. But this, with the power figures that it has, with the engine that it has, it's still fun to drive around. And so that'll actually get me into summing things up here with the X3. First off, exterior wise, I mean, it doesn't stand out all that much. It just looks like a BMW. The taillights are pretty interesting, but I mean, it looks like just like any other BMW SUV. So I think it's a pretty good looking vehicle, but it doesn't really stand out. Interior wise, I like the two-tone interior with this, right? The cream on the bottom and then the darker colors up top. I think that is great from an interior perspective. And then in terms of the technology, it's great, right? The navigation here on the center screen, the infotainment system is really easy to use. The gesture control that it has with your hands, where you can turn up and down the volume, is also really nice to have. Hey, you guys can see I'm just partial throttle. Just has so much torque that you can just move. It moves. Yeah, gesture control works great. The heated seats work great. And then I guess my only complaint is the gesture control. Like, I talk with my hands, so sometimes it's like, what's happening? And I'm like, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But I guess one thing I would like to mention is I wish this car did have ventilated seats. It's got heated seats, doesn't have ventilated seats though. That would have been a nice option to have. The dual zone climate's great. All the controls are like very nicely labeled too, so everything's easy to use. So overall, like this car's a great daily driver. It has a fun side to it as well. It's a really good luxury car. It's got good storage space. It's got good space in here in general to take people around. And so if you're looking for like a really nice luxury daily driver that you can also have a little bit of fun with, the X3 does that. It pretty much does everything really well. It's one of those multi-purpose vehicles. And so in terms of a score, right, I haven't reviewed a ton of vehicles in this segment, but what I'd have to say is, you know, for about $50,000, for all the stuff that this has, if you don't need like, you know, a larger vehicle like a third row SUV, I'd have to say this is really high up there on the list for me. Just because of how it feels and drives. I definitely prefer this to the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. I know a lot of people might be wondering on that one. I like this a little bit more than the Stelvio. The Stelvio has prettier styling, but this, I feel like this drives better, and it's a more well-rounded vehicle. So maybe that's the comparison that I need to make. But yeah, that is the X3. Now let's get some things up for our review on this 2022 BMW X3. And with all that being said, I will see all of you in that next video.